somewhere internally I just had this strong feeling that came from somewhere deep inside of me that just said, look, life doesn't have to be this way, and there's an infinite potential for it.
I didn't then, and a lot of people these days don't spend any time on their minds.
Hey everybody, welcome to Get Real, a podcast about living your greatest life. You're going to want to tune in to today's one. There's been some real fireworks based on a conversation that Cameron and I had yesterday. Cameron's just really going to open up with some real honesty, and we go from there. There's so much covered about genuine life and about going forward, so definitely stay tuned. Hey Cam, good to be here with you again.
Yeah, mate, great to be back.
Yeah, well, what's happening in your world?
Oh, just same old stuff every day. I'm working. I've actually been away at the Real Estate Institute Awards for New Zealand this week. So I've been watching the Olympics, and I was lucky enough to get the number one agent in New Zealand. So, which is pretty good. It's about the third time I've done that. So it's across all brands. So I'm really proud of that as a accolade or something that we've done as a team. So it's good. But it was interesting because we're going to talk today about how, we had a conversation yesterday, and we were talking about going up to Auckland to winning the award, and how we had quite a heated conversation, didn't we? Because you said
it was a wee bit intense, yeah.
Yeah, you said to me one of the words, and it still sticks with me this morning. The very next day, you said to me, "You live in a fantasy. You're not living your real life," and it was, it was thought provoking, wasn't it? Because what you were saying to me is that's not who you really want to be doing, and what you want to be doing, and how you want to be living your life, and I wasn't making a big deal about winning the award, but, everything from the award in my mind, now I look back, I had to go up to Auckland, take the day off, which means I didn't have my Friday off work, which I usually try and do. It was a late night, I usually try to go to bed early. It sounds like all these things, but it totally got me out of my routine since I've been up in Auckland. It was just for one night. I haven't done any of my saunas, any of my hyperbaric chambers. So anything that I wanted to do this week has kind of just been ruined for the week just by getting that award. It's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I think to put some context to it, because I'm a success coach, so when people come, they're often coming to get better results. So to hear that might be a bit of a shock to say, that success is a fantasy, but to put some context to that, we've known each other for a while, and we've worked together for a number of years now, and I think when it comes to success, and in a really positive way, we have a lot of that around. You mentioned the Olympics, and there's been some great success in our country. For 10 gold medals for a tiny country like New Zealand is pretty awesome. But at the same time, you'll know from our conversations that I'm very much about success, but to me, success is not just, one area. And I think with the most successful people like you in your industry, so much emphasis gets put on that to continue, the pressure to continue. Like, for example, where do you go if you're not number one? Like there's only down to go, right? Essentially. So that pressure is there. And what ends up happening, and whatever you want to say about it, it's like, well, what is the cost of that? Like, what's the cost of that success? And to me, true success, and this is what I'm really about, is at the end of the day, living the life that we really want to have. And my experience of working with people over the years is we don't just have one thing that we want to do. We have, health that we want to have. We have relationships, in a certain way that we want to have. We have all kinds of, relationships in our life that we want to go a certain way. And we have numbers of different interests. And really when it comes down to it, it's the desires. And because I work with highly successful people every day, I see that oftentimes that success can basically suck us up into not fostering those other things. And when we don't pay attention to those things, we don't focus on them, then we get that feedback. And so as we get that feedback and certain things aren't working out because we're focused on, I'd love to hear from you more about what it takes to be that 1%, because my experience is it's all encompassing. I mean, it's basically you've got to put yourself there all the time. So that stands to reason if you look at that just logically, other things are going to fall by the wayside when that focus is on there. And so the fantasy that we were talking about and that I brought up is just that, like is Is our overall life the one that we actually really want to live? And, the unfortunate thing with highly successful people is often the question is no. I'll basically say almost always when it's extreme success, the sacrifices or so-called sacrifices are there, but it ends up being not genuine. And I've done the work that I do long enough to see people at the end of that journey say, why did I do that? Like, what drove me to do that one thing? And now they wake up to this area of my life, my relationship isn't working well. My health suffered for that. I didn't focus on learning and growth that I wanted to have. So there's a lot of things in life that got missed. And for me, the real key thing is at the end of the day, because my work is all about being genuine, it's what did the person or is the person living their genuine life? And if they're not, then that's why I call it a fantasy. And my just practical experience is that most successful people just experientially are living that. And because there's so much accolade there, you mentioned that word, because there's so much admiration, because there's so much success, it becomes a lure. So as these other parts aren't, being focused on, and they're kind of falling apart, because that's what happens. Entropy happens where we don't put focus. And when those parts break off, we go farther into, well, this is where I've got success, so I'm just going to go farther into that. And so that ends up being the fantasy, because at the end of the day, we all wake up to, did I live the life I really wanted to? But just success has got a lot of trappings to it. And that's kind of why I brought that up, because look, I'd love to hear from you on it. What I was seeing from that conversation was that success it's all encompassing. So there's some other things that we're working on that were not, it was just kind of going out of your mind state. And as a result of that, those things that I know are important to you weren't getting the attention that they needed to have. So that's why I talk about a fantasy. And then, we get caught up more and more into that side. So yeah.
Well, it was a heated conversation. I mean, there was actually, there was some swear words, wasn't there? Like it was unusually like a heated, and that's what I needed probably to sort of slap me around the face. But one of the things you said to me was you were hiding in your work. Because, I've got other stuff going on in my life at the moment with relationships and even like you said, health and fitness, I just haven't quite got that going how I like to have it. I'm usually in such a great routine that, my diet's great, I'm getting up early in the morning, and at the moment, the last 6 months or so, I've just been really struggling with it, to be honest, and I haven't said it to anyone, but I haven't felt like I'm living my best life, but it hasn't occurred to me because you get blinded and you hide in your work. And that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm so comfortable in real estate, and I guess I'm so good at it that I can do it with my eyes closed. Yeah. And for me, that's my comfortable space. So it's kind of like, I mean, is it fair to say that when I do better in real estate, the rest of my life gets worse? Is it the magic trying to get them both going together, or?
Yeah, I mean, for me, Cameron, it's keeping everything in mind and then balancing our life out. Like it's, you're bringing up something that's super important here, and it's not something that's talked about very often. So if I can just stop and say thanks for your honesty, like I know that's what we talked about doing on this podcast from the very beginning. And so, but it takes a lot of courage, and I appreciate you bringing it up. By the way, it's coming to say that when the cuss words come out, it's only because, it's like, okay, this is the last resort. We gotta crack through something. So
clearly I wasn't listening. Clearly I wasn't listening. And I think like I appreciated you saying those things, because you do get blinded to it. Like you get blinded to it, and you just don't even realize it's happening until it's too late. Like a few weeks go down the track and you get out of your routines and doing whatever you want to do, and you just think that becomes the new norm. And then it's just all about work, because that's the only way where you're getting lifted up, and it's a really hard thing to firstly recognize.
It's very tricky, which is why, I wasn't making anything wrong. It was just how are we going to broach this conversation so we can actually have it? Excuse me. And, that's the thing. Like, there's certain aspects of life that are a bit harder than others. And, it's when you're starting success, when you're getting as successful as you've got, that's the hard part. But once you get there, you find your rhythm, you have your business, you're, as you said, it's now easy for you. You've been number one for, I've got it more than 3-4 years. I think you've been number one in some way for a good, decade or more. And, that the thing is that there's a lot of trapping in that. Like there's people every day, oh, Cameron, I want to be like you. And, that's alluring. That's alluring. And we want to, that's the easy place to go. But the harder place for all of us, is our relationships in our life. It's those real conversations that we want to have. It's sharing ourselves honestly. It's the vulnerability, and that's where people get afraid. And so what we end up doing is when we have that over there, and this is why I brought up that it's a fantasy, because I've just worked with enough people now and lived my own life of the journey of success enough to see this over and over again. And it's that what happens is, so we're not dealing with that vulnerability over here, because why? Because it's scary, right? That's, to go out and be successful in a career, even if it's on social media and all that sort of stuff, is one thing. There's edits involved in that, and there's, the fact that we know what we're doing in that. But to actually get vulnerable with people that are in our inner circle, for example, our friends, our loved ones, our partners, our children, our parents, those people that they know us outside of that world of success. I always say those are the people that know us the most, because they see all sides of us. They don't just see the persona at work, they know the real person through and through. And what ends up happening, and this is interesting because we don't know we're doing it. What ends up happening is, because that's scary, we go, well, hey, I've got this, I'm like Mr. and Miss, Mrs. or Miss or whatever, like superstar over here. I'm just going to go there. That's like, I get all the adoration that I want. I get the success. I get the, likes on Facebook or whatever the case might be. I get all of that. And so we end up getting sucked into that. And instead of dealing with this, if you think about it logically, because all of this is unconscious, like we don't know this is going on. But if we think about it logically, do I have those scary conversations over there to forward, my closest relationships? That's where we always feel the most vulnerable. Do we do that? Or do I go over here and get more likes? Or do I, get more people adoring me and wanting to be like me? It's kind of a no-brainer. But at the end of it, we wake up one day, because if I can say this, we want what we want. Whether we know it or not, we want what we want. The reason I gave you a hard time yesterday is because I've known you enough to know what you really want. And at times, I take nothing from you. You're dedicated. You work towards everything. But at times, that success I'm going to be interested to hear what you say now. But that success can just, when it gets tough, it's easy to just go, well, hey, I've got that over there. That's kind of what I mean by the fantasy. And we wake up one day and go, you know what? I really regret that. I wish I would have had those conversations and forwarded that. So that hopefully that gives you a bit more context.
One of the things I think is that as human beings, we chase comfort. You actually have to, I think the magic comes from discomfort in life, and the discomfort that you push through is where the good stuff happens. And it's easy for me to go back into the comfort of real estate because everyone thinks I'm a superstar. You said to me yesterday, when you were talking to me and really hit me between the eyes, you said to me, you're failing. You're a failure. It's a hard thing to say to someone that you're failing, and, that hurts you, it really hurts somebody, but it's what you kind of need, because it shocked me into thinking, and even though you don't think it at the moment, reflecting on that later in the evening, it was interesting, because then we went on to talking about, once we both cooled down a little bit, we talked about how we rate ourselves in life at the moment. And, I think I rated myself, not just in real estate, because in real estate, to do what I do, you've got to give it 10 out of 10, Yeah. And I rated myself at the rest of my life and relationships and time with my kids and fitness and all that. And I gave myself a 3, and I'm a person, and people look at me and think, shit, I want the life that Cameron's got, and he's got it all right, and, I haven't got it all right because I'm a 3, So, and I hate failing, and I don't want people to think that I'm a failure. And it really, in all areas of life, I don't think anybody really wants that. But, it became pretty relevant to me that I was failing in what I was trying to do. Yeah. I was failing on probably the biggest part of my life, because, who really cares if you win awards and make lots of money and stuff like that? It doesn't really matter if you don't see your kids, and you've got partners that are not happy, and those sort of things that become relevant to me in the last few weeks is that I haven't seen my kids very much in the last few months, and I haven't spent the time with them, and that's really what I'm trying to do.
Well, see, one day they grow up and, I've just seen it a number of times. Like I was on that path, Cameron, and I, really just got it in the nick of time.
Yeah.
Just because I've just got the one. But, I was just on the path and we get caught up in it and we get successful and things do happen and it's exciting. But then we wake up one day and we say, well, why doesn't my child want to talk to me? Why does my child who's now an adult don't want to know me? And we don't realize that it's because we didn't give them that time and show them that, that love. We love them, but we just didn't show it. And as a child, they don't really care how successful we are. They just want mom or dad there. And yeah, I mean, the reason I said that, like I put out a long time ago, Cameron, that I said to the world, or whatever you want to call it, when I created my mission or whatever you want to call it, I just, I have a lot of techniques about success, but I just wasn't interested in working with people that just wanted to have all the success so they could look good and all that type of stuff. I said, world, bring me people that do want to be as successful as they can be, but also just really want to live their genuine life. And I know since that time, whether people know it or not, when they come to do work with me, they actually want to truly wake up. And what I mean by that is they want to wake up to themselves. They don't want to be one of those people that get 30, 40 years down the road and wake up, because a lot of those successful people, I've studied a lot of them throughout the years, a lot of those successful people are lonely. And that's what they say. They're just alone with all their riches. And at the end of the day, this is the interesting thing, when they're finished doing what they're doing, which we all get to the end of our, our jobs or our careers or whatever we do, we're old news. And it's like the next person is number one and, we're focused on them. And so we end up there and it's like, that's when people wake up and say, well, what did I actually build? And, one of my teachers ages ago talked about, not just about making money, because I'm dedicated to success and I'm very open about that. I think being successful and having wealth and all that is great because it opens up opportunities, but it's when it sucks us into that. And you said the word, we're blinded to it, right? And that's what happens. But we don't stay blinded. And for most people, the tragedy is it's too late by the time they figure it out. And they wake up one day and just say, well, all my loved ones have left me. They don't want to know me. I've got nice stuff, but I'm really lonely. And we find out at the end of the day, those relationships and those people that we love, like that was what was so important that we liked. I'm not saying it's the only thing that's important, but we find out that it's most likely what's most important to most of us is those loved ones. So, the reason, again, I really acknowledge your courage being honest about that conversation yesterday. The reason I said that is I know in you that you want that, you want this, like you've been working diligently for that period of time. But we've had these conversations, Cameron, where that success, what's the word? Like when I talk about a fantasy, it's, there's a lot of fantasies out there that people get caught up in, and but they suck us up and they have a great lure to them. Right. And the thing is, so when I said that about failing, I just went, look, because I could see that that's what was happening, but it was moving into that blind area where you weren't seeing that you were falling back into that, if you don't mind me saying, you were falling back into that. Like you were making all this really great progress and then you were falling back into getting there. And I'm like, okay, well, what's going on? And we could see some of the, the results that started to kind of move in that other direction again. And I just went, well, what does Cameron need to wake up? Like I did speak to you very directly, as you're saying, and it was just like, well, I don't think Cameron would be talking to me if he didn't really want to wake up. And you've been talking to me for a long time. I'm pretty clear on that with what I do, right? I'm not.
I mean, it's a good point. You don't show up to those meetings, and I kind of walked into it knowing that I was going to get a bit of a rev up, So, and it's easy not to go to those meetings, isn't it? It's very easy to say you're too busy or to cancel them, and I've done that before, and to know that, like, it was kind of like I knew that I was going into a battle, but I did want it, So I think when you don't go to those things, you're not ready for it.
That's it. I mean, when people, that happens to people because I'm pretty clear on that. If you're not interested in waking up to who you really are and what you really want in your life, I'm not probably the guy that you want to
Yeah.
speak to. And I've seen all of that. Like it's the thing is it's unconscious. Sometimes people don't
Yeah.
even know they're doing it. They're just like, oh, you know what? Something's come up in my life, and I'll see that be a pattern. But I know from the years I've done this, that person is there. It's fear. It's like, they don't want to face that, and that's where I think, to me, Cameron, I've known you for a long time. That's far more where you're number one, as far as I'm concerned. You're number one because no matter how hard it gets, you show up. You're here today after that call yesterday, talking about it, and that to me is far more number one than being on a stage. And I'm not taking anything from that. You've worked very hard, but being number one at your genuine life, that to me is really number one. And so yeah, but
You said that to me yesterday. I think it's a really important thing, to be number one at your genuine life is winning, isn't it really?
yeah, I mean, if we look at it right now, there's a lot of examples. I mean, we've got a lot we can talk about here because we've had the Olympics recently where there's a lot of number one in New Zealand, which is awesome. Some very dedicated people. We've got Duval Group that's happened, in receivership. And, I think if we take that one first, because that's in your area of property anyway, I mean, that's a real point of what I'm talking about here. I mean, that whole thing, if you now deconstruct, and you could see it on the way. I was seeing it on the way going, this just doesn't seem right.
So what were you saying? What were you saying?
Well, it's just like the look at us, where the whole building themselves up and our jet planes and all this. I'm just like, that's just total ego. They're not doing this for the right reason. They're doing this to puff themselves up. And
Were they doing that though because were they making themselves look successful and wealthy and that so that they would sell more buildings? Was that their plan?
I don't know them, so I can't say, but what I have done is I've worked with a lot of people in that industry, and I've seen the mentality that people have when they're successful at it. You're one of them. And I've seen the mentality when they're not successful, when they crash hard. A lot of people in that industry crash hard. And generally what happens is they have a grow too fast mentality. That's the thing that I've seen. I want to grow too fast. Why they want to grow too fast? What I've discovered, because I've actually worked with some of them, is there's an insecurity in belief. They don't know that, but it's like anyone doing that. I mean, interestingly, I think something important to discuss here, success is a relatively quiet venture as far as I'm concerned. Success is just something we show up to. Excuse my frog there. Success is something that we have something that we want to do, and you'll know. It's like in the beginning, you got to show up, you got to keep going when things get tough and you want to throw it all away. It's relatively quiet and it takes a while to get really successful. But when I see people doing something like that, and I've seen a lot of people in the property industry, I think we're going to see more of this stuff go on. And it's because they go in there and and it's not just property, by the way. I mean, it's I was just talking earlier this morning with Kaushik, who does the videos for us here, about people that get into like a startup. Instead of just going, hey, I want to learn how to do a profitable business, they go, I want to be $5 million in the first year. I'm like, why don't you just learn how to do a business first and understand the basic principles? So that mentality is, look at me. And it's usually coming from an insecurity. And it could be a marketing technique, but there wasn't any financial knowledge, like no sound financial knowledge behind that. People build this stuff up on air and nothing underneath it. And to me, all I can share is my personal experience. There's an ego to that. There's a look, I'm successful. And what people don't know is that comes from insecurity. It comes from, I'm not good enough. So look, I'm going to build this great company so everybody can look at me on a jet plane. And also, we've talked about this 1,000 times, but people don't care who has a jet plane. They want to deal with people who are honest. They want to deal with people who care about them, and people that are doing that type of stuff. Look, I'm not judging them. It just makes me feel a bit for them because they're just insecure and they need something on the outside for everybody to look at them to feel secure. That's the lure that I'm referring to in that type of situation. So yeah, be interested in your
I like that success is a quiet venture. I like that as a phrase because I think of my career when I started, when I was really, digging in and working hard when I started in my first probably 5 years of real estate. I was just working. I actually didn't. I was quite quiet, and then when I got some success, then I become a bit louder, and I was preaching about what I was doing, and I was needing the cars, and I was needing all that sort of stuff. But for the first 5 years, when I probably did my best real estate ever, working my hardest, I was just loving it, because I think that's why I got to where I was initially, is because I was just doing it through the love of the real estate, and I wasn't trying to get anything else from it. I wasn't trying to earn money. I wasn't trying to be number one. I wasn't trying to be anything. I was just really loving what I was doing.
Yeah.
And then it changed, because I felt like, in my mind, I had to show people that I was good, or show people that I'd done lots of sales, or, those sort of things. And at the end of the day, I'd actually spent the first 5 years, and I didn't have to show anybody, because the good work that I did spread through word of mouth. So I didn't have to put it on Facebook that I was number one. I sold someone's house, and they told someone else that I was really good at what I did, and then they told two other people, and then it went from there. So the business that I got just come through being quiet. And that was just dawned on me then,
Well, I was watching the Olympics a bit, because I just love that level of performance. And I was watching the decathlon, and I was just thinking, we're watching this on TV, or some people were there, and this is the glory moment for those people, right? Like every 4 years, a glory moment comes around. And I'm like, but I thought about that decathlon, and I thought, every single day, these, I think it's the men do decathlon and the women do the heptathlon. And I was watching both of them, like, every day they're just jumping again and jumping again and jumping again. And then they're going to the the different, they're doing hurdles the next, and then they're doing hurdles. And I think for 4 years, we're watching this going, wow, look at all this glory. But for 4 years, or their entire career, they're just high jumping. I mean, it's like day after day after day. They're just doing the same. That's the quiet thing. Like, that's the quiet thing that leads to that glory moment. So this is what I mean by it. In essence, if we're just living for the glory moment, that's what becomes the fantasy, right? Like, it's the whole life. Like, we now look at these people and go, wow. And then I'm really just inspired by New Zealand and what we, put out in terms of people, and the work ethic and that type of thing with that. But it's like, if we now fantasize about them, those cycles that these people ride, and these decathletes and things, the things that they do, that's their whole life. Like that's their whole life is centered around that, and their relationships are involved in that. And it's like, I don't think we quite get that. We just see the once a 4 years, and we go, oh, well, look at all the glamour that's associated with that. And I think, if we look at the real life that's behind it, and that's what you're saying. But what I'd be interested to hear you talk about is, because for me, what I'm hearing in what you said is success changes people. Like, it's, I'd be interested to hear because you talked about that first 5 years. It seems to me that success changes people, that the moment we get out there and people start noticing us, well, then all of a sudden we can lose it that day to day. I'd be interested if that, on your feedback on that. And then we get into something else, which I'm calling potentially the fantasy part of it.
Yeah, I think that's a really fair comment. I think you lose who you really are, because you end up wanting to do something for other people, rather than yourself. So you end up wanting to show other people that you're successful, or whatever you're trying to do, and you lose context of who you really are and what you want. So, a lot of times people, to be successful, you're sort of all in, Like, I think it's really hard. I don't know many people initially. I mean, maybe it's something that comes with experience and being further down the track, but I don't know many people that can become successful without being all in. Like, to be in the top, you've got to be all in. Yeah. Like, it takes everything you've got within you to be the number 1%, the 1%. And it's hard to bloody control. And you lose context really quickly of the rest of your life, because all you're focused on is that. So that's why there's a lot of, unhappiness behind the success. Yeah. And I still don't know how to control it, like, I really don't.
Well, something I've seen as a pattern, Cameron, is the challenge with that. And look, a lot of times when people are getting that success, they have partners, they have, sometimes families that are involved with that, and those families make what we call a sacrifice. They're like, hey, I know you've got to go and do that, to be successful. But the problem that I see with just about everyone in that level of success is when it comes time, so the deal, the kind of unspoken deal is, hey, I'm going to go and get successful, and then when I do, we're going to have the life we want together, we're going to have the money, we're going to have all the opportunities. But the problem is success changes people, and we get that. We don't know what we're getting into. I mean, when you started your real estate, you probably had no idea what was going to happen in 5 years. All of a sudden you became Cam Bailey, not just the person, but the brand, and like everyone wants a piece of you, right? And that's what happens, and that's the lure. And what I've seen time and time and time again is people get caught up in that, and these people that sacrificed end up sacrificing for the rest of their lives, and then they get bitter, they get resentful. They're like, well, hey, you were supposed to go and do that for us to have a great life, and now you're sucked up. But I mean, you can tell us more than most people. It's very luring, isn't it? I mean, you got, and I think about like professional athletes, because I work with some really high level athletes. It's like, you know, they're young, they're like, if they're males, you've got women throwing themselves at them. If they're females, you've got men throwing themselves at them all the time. They got money, they've got fame. I mean, this is all the stuff that you get as you're successful. That becomes, I mean, I'd love to hear from you, but to me, that what I see is that becomes so luring that we get sucked up in it. And do we, you know, I'd be interested to hear, because your level of honesty today I really appreciate. Do we ever come out of that? You know, I work with people that, and we had this conversation yesterday, that they don't ever get out of that. And, you know, that's why I gave you a hard time yesterday, because I know from knowing you, you want out of that. You want the whole, you don't want out of the success, but you want the whole thing. Like you're not a person that's just one-eyed for success. You're such a genuine human being, Cameron. And I know from knowing you that you really want to, the true self really wants the whole thing.
Yeah, well, I certainly don't want to rate myself a 3 in life. You know, like it'd be very disappointing to get to the end of my life at whatever I get to and say I'm a 3. You know, I mean, how good would that be? It wouldn't be very good at all. And I mean, I hear what you're saying too about, you know, like you do change. I mean, I've changed from where I was when I was 26 and I started real estate and to what I am now. And you think you're changing for the better, but maybe you're changing for the worse, because, you know, I look at my relationships with my kids and my mum and my dad and Kim and all the people that are really close to me and you know, probably know me better than anybody else in the world. And, you know, I can see what you're saying. I mean, they love you, but you're a different person. So do they love that new person? And that's probably why it's so difficult for relationships to succeed. And, you know, like at the end of the day, they don't care about, you know, whether you're number one, really. They don't care about the holidays you go on, and they don't care about, you know, what you can provide and stuff like that. All they care about is that you go to your daughter's netball, you know, and you know, you're present when you're at home and stuff like that. So those things probably matter to them more than everything else. And yeah, you can really change. And I'm becoming really aware of that, and I'm probably struggling to get out of it, you know? Yeah,
well, I mean, I just appreciate your honesty here, because this is the struggle of success, right? And if I'm, you know, completely open about it, because this is my arena, most people don't even know it's happening until it's too late. And B, when they do figure it out, it's just easier to keep doing what they're doing. And then they end up, you know, but every single one of them regrets it. Like I've not had somebody get to the end of that and say, oh, I'm really pleased I made that decision. You know, they get to the end of it and say, what did I do? Because it's actually quite empty. And all that, if that's what we did, look, there's a very, very few people, and the more that I go, the more that I think it's actually not true. But there seem to be a few people that maybe they only want one thing in their life. But I think now that I'm seeing enough of that, they just didn't get honest enough that wasn't the case, that they actually did want other things in their life. And I've just not seen that. But, you know, what I really appreciate about this is you're just honestly sharing the journey, because that's what it is, right? This is what successful people go through, and why I'm so appreciative of what you're doing, Cameron, is this just goes unspoken about, right? This just goes to where, you know, and then we put all this stuff on successful people. Oh, they've got it all together and they've got this, and they'll come to me and they go, I'm just absolutely abjectly lonely in my life, and what do I do? And then they wake up to all the stuff that had happened in the past, and the fact that you're dealing with this now, because they're hard conversations. I mean, look, let's just be really, really clear. That success can be addictive. It's addictive. I've been an addict. I was addicted to drugs and alcohol it seems in a previous life now, but earlier in my life, it's addictive. And it's like, well, this is real stuff that people deal with. But at the end of the day, something I've learned is fulfillment is the only thing that matters to all of us at the end of the day. No matter what it looked like, we want to be fulfilled. And this is why so many successful people are unhappy. I know we've talked about this before, but if you actually look at it, we think that successful people have it all together, but most of them don't. Most of them they've got one thing together. They've mastered one thing, but the rest of it has paid the price for that. But it is the most important work that we can do. And to me, that's where that's just a whole nother level of success. There's success here, which is great, but there's success there, which is becoming really successful at something that we love and becoming successful at our life as a whole. And, that's kind of, that describes that conversation from yesterday.
I mean, what is the solution? Because, when you sort of made me work out that I was a 3 for life out of 10, as far as my rating of myself goes, I went to, well, should I quit real estate? Like, how can I be a 10 in life if I'm a 10 in real estate, Because what's more important to you? So that's the thought that I had last night. Should I just throw it all in? I don't, I've done it, like, what more can I do? I've been number one forever. What more can I do? And I mean, is that the only answer?
No, it's definitely not the only answer. I mean, the only answer is really, as far as I can see, the only answer is we have to get genuine about what we truly want. So that's really the key. And it's not the same for each person. That's the hard part. And it's like, because who's the us that answers that question? Like, somebody goes, well, why would I want to walk away from all that adoration and everything that I'm getting every day? And I'll say, because, well, how fulfilled are you? It's the first step of it is honesty. It's the honesty that you're bringing today. And it's that honesty that when you look at your life, that's the first question. How am I going, not just in my work, how am I going in life? And if we take a look at a whole, not judging ourselves, but you're honest, Cameron, you're like, I'm a 3 overall. And then you say, well, from that perspective, because we have to take a step back, what do I truly want? Like, who am I and what do I want? And that's the work to be done. Who am I? And the best way I can say for somebody to do this, without delving and doing a bit of work, is just saying, look, if nobody was looking, and it didn't matter. Like, if you, I read something the other day, it was quite powerful. It said something like, it did this really beautifully. Basically, the gist of it is, in 150 years' time, nobody's ever going to know we were here. Like, it's just all the stuff that we think is important. They're not even going to know that we're here. No matter what we've done. I mean, people go, I'm going to leave a name all throughout history. I'm like, if they do talk about you, it's just going to mention your name for like a second. Why would you live your whole life so some random person in the future can mention you? What a horrible way to think about living your life. Now is when we're alive. And so what I say to people is, think of that. Think of that in 200 years' time. Nobody's even going to know that you're here in the first place. So all of this accolade and all that sort of stuff isn't going to matter. And if we go to that point and just say, well, who am I and what's actually important to me in this life? One of the exercises I like to do is go to the end of my life and say, what do I, what if I'm sitting in a chair reviewing my life, what am I going to be happy seeing? And I do some scenarios. What if I just kept going? Because I did business this way too. So when my son was growing up, I was traveling all over the place and I was away a lot of the time. Like, I did the best I could to be there, but for some years, everything was sacrificed. So this is personal to me too. And I saw what happened to that relationship. And I didn't like it. I'm so thankful every day that I woke up in time and realized I need to look at everything that's important to me, not just one thing. And so that's one thing we could do, is just say, well, what am I going to, if it doesn't matter to anybody else, what am I going to be happy knowing that I dedicated myself to? And I got honest about it. I asked myself, if I keep going in this direction, this is a great question too. If I keep going in this direction, what's going to be good about my life and what's not going to be good about my life? And then I looked at, I'm not going to have a relationship, the relationship that I want. I'm not going to have a good relationship with my son. I'm going to have one thing. It's just going to be work people are going to be all the people, and I love the people I work with, but that's going to be it. And I'm going to end up being lonely, and I'm going to have that one thing. Okay, is that what I really want? No, it's not what I want. Well, what do I really want? Well, I want to have a great relationship. And, I really got honest about that. My relationship, my marriage, I've been married for over 20 years now, and that's super important to me. And I'm thankful that I dedicate time and energy to that. Like I'm a pretty honest guy, and like I can be out there and do talks to hundreds of people or whatever the case might be. But there's a side of me that when that's done, I'm hanging out, on the couch with my wife in my pajamas or whatever the case might be, and I'm just I'm chilling out. I have that side of me. I have a real quiet side to me as well, and that's so important to me. Like I know if I don't get that, something's missing. Like if we pay attention to ourselves, this is the hard part. Like when everybody's after us and, oh, you're so great, it's hard to just stop and get in touch with what's really working for us. But that's what's important to do. You've said to me, Cameron, I hope you don't mind me saying this. You've said along the way in this journey a few times to me, I'm not really happy. I'm not really happy. When you get really genuine, you said, I'm not really happy. And I mean, what a gift for people to hear that, because people look at you and say, of course he's happy. He has everything. And why shouldn't he be happy? But you're not happy because of that. Isn't that true?
Yeah, it's true.
And that's what we got to do. I see you're seeing something right now, aren't you? What are you seeing?
Well, I'm actually seeing myself on a beach somewhere in Bali or something like that. Like it's weird. I was thinking, and I was thinking just that, if I continue along this avenue, I've got no family, no nothing at the end of it. So it's a pretty bloody dismal life I'm heading towards if I don't change things around, but, if I could do anything today, if money didn't matter and nothing else mattered, I'd love to be traveling the world and, being on a beach in Bali, just relaxing. And that would probably be, if I could be anywhere in the world, I'd love to have my kids and a relationship and all that sort of stuff, of course, as well. But,
See, that's genuine for everyone to see. That's the answer to the question. It's getting there. So that's what's true. And you can listen to that. Like, this is something that's so important to me, and so few people do. And this is why I speak to people the way I spoke to you yesterday, because I know that. I know now that there's only one thing that's important: to listen to that internal voice that's the true one. The one that's saying, this is the life that you want to live. We've got to follow that. Like if we want to actually be alive, we've got to listen to that. And sometimes it's faint. I mean, if you think about that voice, probably seems a bit faint compared to Cam Bailey, the #1 real estate agent in the whole country. That's probably like, oh yeah, that sounds nice, but I'm going to do that. But as I just look you in the eye, Cameron, that's what's genuine for you. And you have said that, something like that before, that when you get into those genuine moments. So
I think there's more to it than just laying on the beach. I think it's more like doing the things that I love. Like it would be like, health and wellness and, retreats and, all of those sort of things that go with it. So it's not just laying on the beach drinking pina coladas or whatever. I think it's the health and wellness and spiritual side and almost the opposite of what I've got now, having almost probably no cares and responsibilities and not having to worry about, money and mortgages and stuff like that, and actually just raw, Yeah. I think that's what I kind of feel like sitting here now, raw, free,
Well, that's, to me, that this is, I think, the favorite conversation with you that I've had, because this is going somewhere where we don't get to talk about every day. And that's that little voice when you hear it. It's got to be acted upon. See, that's the thing. Like when you heard that internal, I call it internal voice, or just that thing, when you heard that voice about real estate, you listened to it, you took an action, and then you took another action. And as you took those actions, it got louder, and it got louder until it became the way that you lived your life. People sometimes often come to me and they say, I don't really know what I want in my life. And I say, well, you know what? That's actually not true. Because if you just get in those quiet moments, there have been times where your authentic self has spoken to you about what you really want. The deal is not that you don't know. The deal is you're not listening. You're not listening to it for whatever reason. You're not following that up. And it's so important that we've got to nurture that. Like, we've got to take an action in that direction, and then that action turns into another one, and then you end up living that life. I really hope you do go in that direction, and you start living that life, and you go, I've had people do this, and they say, why didn't I do this 10 years ago and 15 years ago? And the answer to that is because you didn't listen to that voice at that time. And look, that time's gone anyway, so I'm not about regret, but it's like, the thing is you're here now. Are you going to listen to that voice today? And it doesn't have to be, cash in everything and do that. It's just like, okay, well, what's my action step to nurture that? And it will guide you in the process. Like, my experience with this is it's usually not an overnight. I mean, occasionally overnight, people just say, right, that life is over and I'm doing this. But generally, it's usually like, I'm going to take a step in that direction, and it starts to build up. And then it just naturally gravitates to more and more what we love to do.
Yeah.
Until we wake up one day and we realize, I'm actually living the life that I love.
So it's kind of like giving that thought or that feeling oxygen, and then it'll grow. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Man, that's better than I've said it. Like, that's a very clear way. It's to give it oxygen. But most people, we get those snippets and we do nothing with it. That's just so, it's sad, because in my work, I see those people at the end. I see some interesting things in my work, Cameron, and sometimes people come to me when they're dying or they have a terminal illness and they want to get right with life and get right with people. And we have some, at that point in life, there's no BS anymore. There's no small stuff. People get because all the small stuff's gone when people have they know they have limited time. We all have limited time, but they know it. And it's very limited for those people. And they get present. I mean, this is a bit hard for me to say, but they get present to that moment. I didn't live my life. I didn't do it, and they want to air it out. This is what I really wanted to do. I wanted to go and chase health and wellness, and I wanted to do this, and I didn't do it. And it's not just that they feel that at the end, it's the life that they live, the life that you live. It's the 3 out of 10. And what I'd love to hear from you, since, and again, thanks for your honesty, is outside of that, what I called the fantasy part, and you know why I said that now, because it's leading to that 3 out of 10. The way that you're doing it, I think, is now a fantasy. If you can get rid of anything you don't want to say here, but that's the part that's the fantasy, because the 3 out of 10 is letting you know, hey, the way that you're doing that isn't genuine to yourself. So would you be willing to share, because I keep talking about the end, what's that 3 out of 10 life actually like? How do you know it? Like, when does it come up for you now? Because you're in it, you must feel it at times. You must become aware of it at times, or it must have some impact, because on some level you'll know you're doing that. Does that make sense? So how does that play out now?
Well, I think that if I look at how I've been the last 6 months or whatever like that, it's I'd describe it as hard. Like, nothing's easy. Even talking to my kids is hard, and the kids are grumpy, and we're arguing more, and like, nothing's easy. And then it's even so much as a struggle. I used to bounce out of bed at 5 a.m, and like, it's just a little bit harder getting up and pushing myself to the gym. And then I was so strict in all my diets and everything that I was doing, because I just loved doing them, that everything's a bit hard at the moment. And I mean, it's stupid. It sounds stupid, but last night I ate 3 chocolate biscuits. And that means nothing, but it's like, to me, it was just what I don't do, Well,
for knowing you, I mean, for somebody else, that's like eating a big tub of ice cream.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what we do.
It's almost like I'm depressed, I'll have biscuits, like, it's a little bit like that,
Calling. That's the calling. That's our life calling us to say, hey, you're not living this the right way. And again, excuse me for saying it so many times, I'm just so appreciative of what you're saying here, because this is the road that people are on but never talk about. And then they end up waking up one day just absolutely full of regret. And it's like, but it's not depression. It's separation. It's separation from who and what we truly are. And so the thing to do there is to listen to that internal voice. Like, I love that, in 200 years time, or if they said 150 or whatever, I mean, if you go 500 years time, because I can fathom that one, in 500 years time, who's even going to know who I ever was? Like, if I'm hoping to write something that may be on a shelf somewhere or something of that nature. But even then, people are like, who's the Shrita guy? They've got no connection. Even a few generations from now, they've got no connection. And the reason I'm saying that is not to be down about who we are, is to say, what are we here for? We're here to live this life. We're here to live who we are. That's what I'm all about. And internally, there's not one person that doesn't know what that is. We just don't listen. And that to me is the great tragedy of life, is we don't go for the life that we have, and it's usually some sort of fear that stops us, or that lure, hey, things are really good over there, so I'm not going to leave that, I'm going to stay there. But if we, what I hear you saying is, when you start to eat those biscuits, look, sometimes it's not the biscuits, it's why you're eating the biscuits. And that's where most people, we have so many, I talk about this a lot. If we took everything addictive and added it up, how much money do you think is being made around the world on addictive substances?
Trillions.
It's trillions of dollars. And those addictive substances are covering up that lack of fulfillment. That's what it's doing. It's covering up that separation from self.
It's a really interesting way to look at it, isn't it?
It's true. It's really true. That's why we're doing it, because it's pain. But being somebody who knows a thing or two about addiction, because I was there, addiction is all about covering up pain, but it can be quite subtle. And I think what's sad is people don't know that that's what's happening. They don't know that that's what it is. So we just keep in that. And so the best it gets is some temporary instant gratification to cover up a deeper pain. But the real journey, the real 1%, I call it 1% these days, but the being number one, here's what number one really is. Follow that, as Joseph Campbell, a writer, said, follow that bliss. Listen to that voice, and just don't let anyone stop you from it. But that's courage. To me, that's courage. But look, it happened to me. I believe I'm on that track. I do it to the best of my ability, and man, not a day goes by. And look, some people didn't like it. Oh, you need to do this with your life, and what are you doing? People care about you. Like, oh, why are you going that track? I'm so thankful I didn't listen to any of them. And it's led me here to have this conversation with you today. I simply cannot think of anything else I'd rather be doing at this moment of time. And so, that's the important thing. I'd love to hear from you, because to listen to that and go forward, and you just would have so much to say about that journey.
It's been a really great conversation.
Yeah, well, thank you, Cameron, because your honesty opened that up. So if I can probably say the biggest thanks to you so far in this conversation. So, and I'll say that on behalf of everyone, because this is not something people get a chance to hear every day. And if you didn't show up with that courage, we wouldn't have got there.
Cool. Thank you.